Okay, ladies, this is going to be short and sweet. I'm so very sorry I can't be with you tonight, and I'm trusting Donna's going to give you the whole intel of what's going on. I've been having high blood pressure, which is unusual for me, and extremely bad headaches, worse than my migraines usually are. So just debilitating headaches. Went to the doctor this morning. He did give me blood pressure medicine, so the blood pressure's down, but my head is still just pounding and throbbing, and he said for me to limit activities. I'm hoping that things will kind of get settled with some more pain medicine and that kind of thing. But I'm bound and determined that Satan's not going to win this battle. Pastor Chris said he can put this on DVD, show it to you. So I ask that you pause when there's a time for discussion, and then just discuss amongst yourselves as a lead in it. But again, I'm not going to not teach this class. I know that God opened this door, and I'm going to walk through it, and you were faithful to join me, and there's no way I'm going to back out. So if this is how we need to do it, then this is what we'll do. So last week, I really wanted to talk with you about the whole beginning of looking at the book of Hebrews, and Lisa did such a fabulous job on her video. It's kind of hard to even go behind that, but I wanted us to start off with thinking about anytime we get a letter, be it something from Honey Bunny like this, an anniversary card that he gave me, or it's letters like these that were just given to me with no address, no date on it or anything. Anytime that you get mail, it's natural that you want to look and see, who is it that sent it to you? That's the first thing. Who's this from? And then you naturally are gonna look for what's the purpose of it. Is it a birthday wish? Is it just thinking of you? I haven't seen you in a while kind of letter. And what do they want to say? That's a natural instinct. Well, whenever we pick up the book of Hebrews as a letter, that's what we want to do too. Our instinct is to look and see, well, who wrote it? When did they write it? Who is it written to? And Hebrews gives us kind of a mysterious letter in that way, as Lisa talked about last week, that the writer is really anonymous. There's a lot of it could be him, it could be Paul, it could be Barnabas, it could be, but there's no clear-cut answer because the writer doesn't clearly identify himself. So we know that the letter that we hold in our hands is somewhat mysterious. There's no real address, and we do see sort of a postmark date, if you will, of when it was written, and we know that it was written for a group of people that's much like us in our beliefs. Now, there were a lot more persecution than what you and I go through today, but it's still very much something that we can relate to the people that this was written for. As you read the book, you see that the intent of it is to encourage the church, to encourage this particular congregation, and to remind them of Jesus' supremacy, but also to remind them of obligations. Now, I know that some of you are Bible nerds, much like myself, so you probably did the extra credit in the book for this week, which I'm hoping that some of you did. If you didn't, that's fine. We're going to kind of touch on it just a little bit to be sure everybody's sort of on the same page. But I want you to pause this DVD for right now and address any questions that you may have had from last week. Now, I understand you may have done that last week, and if you did, that's fine. Just go ahead with this. But if you have any questions or anything that's unclear, take this time to kind of freshen up anything that was from the video that you may not have understood or needed clarification. And those notes is from pages 12 and 13 in your book. So I hope that it's nice and full with notes and things, not only what she told you in the lines to fill out, but your added notes on the side. This week's study, though, that I hope you all were able to do, started on page 18 and 19 is what I want to look at. Just kind of starting with that real quick. She opens up talking about us not fitting in. Have you ever been in a situation when you didn't fit in? And I'm sure that most of us have at some point in time. You should have answered that in your book, explaining why and the feelings that you had, and to consider if not fitting in had anything to do with your faith. Did you not fit in because your belief system was different, your faith was different than the ones that you were in? So if you would, pause the video, take a moment to discuss those things. especially focus on the question that says, how can we identify, it's at the bottom of page 19. Yeah, bottom of page 19. It says, how can we identify with and support those in other parts of the world who are persecuted physically for their faith? We're here, we do live in a free country that we can worship, but we still, more and more we see persecution. It's still different than some of other countries where people are being beheaded for that. So discuss that comparison of how we're persecuted for our faith here and people in other countries, how they do that. So take a moment, pause the video, and discuss that for me. Okay, now turn over to page 20 for this week's lesson. It starts with lean into the story. Lisa starts with really dissecting the letter. So I would like for you to, again, pause the video and someone to take the time to read the letter, because understanding everyone's schedule is busy. Some of you may not have even had time to look at the letter and get your thoughts to where you are right now. So pause this and someone to quickly read that. I'm sorry, someone's texting me and I know you're hearing that. That's Pastor Chris. Sorry, hold on. Read Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 through 14, if you would read that aloud. Okay? Now, she talks about two jewels that we see in this scripture. And the first jewel, again, I'm looking at page 20. The first jewel that she talks about are all of the quotations that the writer of Hebrews brings up from the Old Testament. And he brings up those quotations and those things that the Jewish people at that time could relate to and understand. So I think that's important for us to see that approach too, that it was to kind of meet people where they were and give them something familiar that they could relate to. So there were a lot of quotes. There was a lot of contrasting Jesus and to angels, and we see that on page 22 has a nice summary of those quotes. I hope that you looked at that and were able to kind of process some of that. Several of them were from Psalms. So Lisa presents the question on page 23 with which psalm would be your song. So I chose, for mine was Psalms 102, verses 25 through 27 was my first song. And then my second song is Psalms 104, verse 4. So take a moment and discuss, share yours, read them aloud, laugh a little, love a little, and spend some time with talking about this first jewel of which quote from the Old Testament is your passion and your song. Okay, now let's move on to the second jewel that Lisa refers to in the book. And that's on page 24, I think. Yes. About midway of page 24. She's talking about the second jewel, and that's where the pastor, the writer, is proclaiming Jesus as being superior over the angels. Now, I wonder do you give a lot of thought to angels? I'll be honest with you, I never have. I've never really, I believe in them, and I know that they're real, and I believe that there are times that there have been protective angels over me, but I just don't give them a lot of thought. I don't know a lot about them. So I want you to think about what your preconceived ideas of angels are, and then discuss from page 27 what you gained from the scripture, the passages that Lisa shared on page 26. Talk about the responsibilities. Those should be listed on page 27 if you had them. Now, I wrote that I noticed that they give messages, they do God's work and minister. They worship God, and they mediate between God and His people. But share your insights. Share what you guys got out of your reading for that. So pause me again and talk about that. Now think about, why do we not talk about angels? Probably some people do, but most people I don't think really have a lot of dialogue about angels in general and their role. So let's talk about why we don't talk about them, And then also share with one another from page 30. She's asking you to consider what's your favorite encounter from the Bible with an angel. Mine was in the tomb when Mary Magdalene approaches, and there's two angels in white, one seated at Jesus' head position and one seated at his feet. And she says, the angels say to Mary, what are you doing here? And what are you looking for Jesus? He's not here anymore. So that was my favorite one. But I want you to share and discuss what yours were. Again, that should have been your answers on page 30. And it's the second question. So talk about your favorite angel passage from Scripture. Okay? All right, now I want you to turn back into your workbooks, back to page 24 and 25. There's something I want you to look at in the second jewel that she's talking about. She's sort of introducing the angels and talks about the supremacy of Jesus over that. But it really, it really got my attention. When you look at the verses in the page, on the page, you see how that's like that? You can see that when you look at the first one, it says, Jesus is God's Son, therefore his name is superior. The next highlighted one says, Jesus is God's Son, therefore his position is superior, and so on and so on. So I want you to take a minute and just really stop and meditate on that. And you know that every time you see a therefore, you need to stop and see what it's there for. So we see, if we look at that Jesus is God's Son. And because of that, he is superior in his name, because of he's the Son of God. He's superior in his position. He's superior in nature, because the angels worship him. He's superior in his role, because he reigns forever. He's superior in his works, because Jesus created the world. And he's superior in destiny, because he's seated at the right hand of God. So we understand, what angels are a little bit better, but we need to be sure that we don't just see the angel part of the passage, but we really stop and see that comparison and contrast of who Jesus is compared to the angels. Okay, so be sure that we don't miss that. We see that Jesus is King Jesus. Now I want you to ponder too something else. Do you think that we unintentionally and occasionally bring Jesus down from that superior level to more of a level of understanding of where we are? And again, my thought on that is that I don't think we do it intentionally, but we see that the word says that we are a friend of God's, so we look at him as our friend and our Father. But sometimes in that, I wonder, do we lose that superior position that we really see him at as King of Kings? That line could sometimes be blurred between that friend and the king. The ministry of an angel versus the ministry of the actual hand of God. So that's something for you to think about. If you pause the video and talk about that for just a moment. Do your lines get blurred between the friend relationship that we have with Christ and his kingship, that he is in being superior to the angels, superior to us, superior to everything? Do those lines get blurred for you? And do we sometimes get blurred and just assume it's an angel versus the hand of God? Is there a difference in that? Just kind of have some dialogue over that. That if something happens in my life, is it God doing that in my life? Or is it him sending an angel to minister to me? May not even make a difference, but that's something I think that we can talk about and share each other's perspective on that. So go ahead, pause me, do that for just a minute or two. Okay, so I hope that you were able to finish the readings for the week.